Welcome to the audiobook cut for Everyday Millionaires, How Ordinary People Built Extraordinary Wealth, and How You Can Too, by Chris Hogan. We know that millionaires are commonplace, but they sometimes seem to live in a different world. However, this book is a practical guide to show you to change your viewpoint and join them by learning from those who already are. When the author was in his 30s, he started working with Dave Ramsey, who is known for his radio program and books that have sold a lot of copies and focus on how to be more financially responsible and how to build wealth. Because of this exposure, the author changed careers and began working as a financial counselor, which allowed him to see the world in a very different way. He was able to pay off all of his debts and then began to generate riches that would endure. The author and his team conducted a study on millionaires, the largest of its kind. They reached out to more than 10,000 wealthy individuals in the United States and inquired about their routines, beliefs, and approaches to becoming wealthy. There are numerous misconceptions about millionaires out there. The book attempts to set these straight, and we will share some of those with you, including the reason why you should never pay for a name-brand private education, the key to Michael Phelps' Olympic success, and how to program your financial GPS are some of the topics that will be covered in this audiobook cut. There is a widespread belief that the American dream no longer exists. Some people even believe that it is impossible for the typical American to advance in today's society. However, this is not the case. People are harmed when they believe this damaging falsehood because it prevents them from believing they can reach their dreams. Hogan can speak from personal experience on this topic. He was a black man who had been raised in Kentucky by a single parent. At one point in his life, the concept of becoming a millionaire appeared to him to be as far as the stars. However, he discovered that if you have unshakable belief and a plan, then it is possible for you to become a millionaire. It's likely that you'll run into folks who try to convince you that you won't be successful. But don't worry. There's a straightforward method that can make these folks vanish entirely. Just show them why they're wrong. A fantastic illustration of this is the British long-distance runner Roger Bannister. In his day, the general view was that it was physically impossible for a human being to run 1 mile in less than 4 minutes. Some people even entertained the notion that the stress might cause a runner's heart to burst out of their chest. Bannister, however, disproved their assertions on May 6, 1954, when he ran a mile in 3 minutes and 59 seconds, setting a new world record. And once Roger Bannister had demonstrated that running a mile in less than 4 minutes was doable, more individuals started to embrace the concept that they too could run a mile in less than 4 minutes. 6 weeks later, someone else even managed to beat Bannister's record for the fastest time. A similar scenario prevails for millionaires. If you take a look around, you'll notice that other people have accomplished it, and it's not impossible for you to do it yourself. After all, a survey from CNBC Money in 2017 stated that there are approximately 11 million people in the United States who are millionaires today. You should not feel embarrassed once you have added your name to the list. Millionaires are aware that the reason for their financial success is their own personal effort, and they take great pride in this fact. The findings of Hogan's investigation made this point abundantly evident. Millionaires feel that winning is not something to be embarrassed of, but rather something that should always be celebrated. That does not mean that millionaires are successful at everything they put their hands to. It simply indicates that they are not discouraged by failures and instead view them as opportunities to improve and achieve more success in the future. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get inspired by busting some myths about who millionaires are and what they're like. We've all heard this at some point. I bet that guy has never worked a day in his life. People have a tendency to believe, for some unknown reason, that those who are wealthy must have been either extremely fortunate or born with a silver spoon in their mouths in order to achieve their current level of success. But, what do you think? The majority of millionaires did not receive their wealth through inheritance. Actually, 79% of the people the author questioned had not received any inheritance at all. They got where they are by putting in a lot of effort, making some sacrifices, and sticking to the plan. Take for instance the case of Thomas. He came from a family where drunkenness and dysfunction were common, and he spent his childhood in poverty. Both of his parents passed away when he was still young, and by the time he was ready to enroll in college, he had already decided that there were two things in particular that he wanted to steer clear of throughout his life: alcohol and financial hardship. Thomas earned his doctorate, but he did not immediately pursue a prestigious position that paid a big salary. Instead, he spent the previous 37 years working as a maths teacher. When he finally decided to retire, he had a net worth of $2.6 million. Thomas built his fortune via hard work and smart investments. He did not benefit from good fortune or inherit money. He maintained a steady savings rate by avoiding debt, making all of his payments in cash, working more hours wherever possible, and making astute investments. When someone has amassed a fortune of $1 million or more, many believe that luck must have played a part in their success. In point of fact, they are simply unable to recognize the labor that went into achieving the success. Take, for example, the world-renowned swimmer Michael Phelps. The most successful Olympian in the history of the Games, he was also blessed with a physique that was tailor-made for the sport of swimming. Many people attribute his achievement to both chance and the fact that he has strong genes. Phelps would only take 1 day off per week while he was at the height of his athletic prowess, training for up to 6 hours each day. In addition to his intense workouts with the weights, he swam about 50 miles per week. He was well aware that despite all of those hereditary advantages, none of them would amount to anything without the reinforcement of diligent effort. Millionaires are not that dissimilar to everyone else. If you believe that a millionaire's accomplishment is purely the result of chance, you will never achieve that level of financial success for yourself. In fact, there are sufficient opportunities available for everyone, regardless of whether they have inherited wealth or not. However, you have to have faith in it. Every single one of the millionaires that Hogan has ever had the opportunity to engage in conversation with undoubtedly does. They are aware of the numerous choices that are available to them, and they have the insight to choose the most advantageous ones. It's possible that when you imagine a wealthy person, the first thing that comes to mind is a slick Wall Street trader who pulls off daring deals that make her a billionaire overnight. I'm sorry to be the one to break it to you, but it doesn't really happen in real life. It is a fallacy to believe that wealthy people must engage in high-stakes financial speculation. For instance, not a single one of the millionaires profiled in the author's analysis ever mentioned investing in individual stocks, and it's easy to understand why. The associated risk is simply too enormous. Investing all of your money in a single stock is the same as placing all your eggs in one basket. If the stock doesn't perform well, you can say goodbye to the money you've worked so hard to achieve. Then there are virtual currencies like Bitcoin. The likes of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are getting a lot of press these days. They are trending, recently established, and have the potential to make people extremely wealthy. However, cryptocurrencies are risky. They have not been tested, they are not subject to any regulations, and nobody is liable for them. They carry an inherent and unavoidable danger, the kind of threat that most millionaires steer clear of like the plague. Where does that leave us with the other extreme of the spectrum? There are, however, assets that have a low level of risk, such as bonds and certificates of deposit. They are, by and large, fairly safe wagers, yet, as a result of this, the potential rewards are typically not particularly high. The vast majority of millionaires don't invest in things like this because they stay away from both high-risk and low-risk extremes. In fact, 79% of millionaires believe that their routes to riches were fairly predictable, and one of the most important factors in their success was an employer-sponsored retirement plan. What kinds of things did they put their money into the majority of the time through those plans? Mutual funds that invest in growth stocks strike a balance between a manageable level of risk and a substantial opportunity for expansion. This takes us to yet another urban legend, which is that being a millionaire is all about getting rich as quickly as possible. The reality is that millionaires are in it for the long haul. 95% of millionaires achieved their current level of success after working towards it for more than 10 years. When they were 49 years old, the majority of them had finally made their first million. The entire concept of getting rich quickly is nothing more than a myth, and it is this myth that diverts people's attention away from tried and true means of amassing riches. Even the author is aware of the time when he allowed himself to be enticed by the promise of rapid financial success. He put all of his money into a single stock, which was AOL, after hearing about a friend who had achieved rapid and substantial gains. Soon after, he realized just how risky this was, and he went from having $25,000 in his bank account to having $25,000 less before he finally came to his senses and cut his losses. It goes without saying that in order to join the ranks of the Millionaire Club, one must possess both a distinguished education and a high-status profession. There is a drop of truth in that statement, but only a drop. It's a well-known fact that the majority of millionaires have some level of college/higher education. A poll reveals that just 33% of the general population possesses a bachelor's degree, in contrast to the fact that 88% of the millionaires in the author's study had one. According to research conducted at Georgetown University, those who have earned a bachelor's degree earn an average of 74% more money over the course of their careers compared to individuals who have just earned a high school diploma. This finding is consistent with other studies that have shown the value of a college education. However, this does not imply that an established educational institution is required to provide a fruitful education. Ask the people who have made millions. A public state school was the source of education for 62% of their degrees. There is, of course, nothing inherently wrong with attending a private school. Those that are in a position to afford to attend them may find that doing so is to their advantage. According to CNN Money, the overall cost of one academic year at a typical private school comes out to approximately $45,370. On the other hand, the average cost of attending a public school is approximately $20,090. This means that in order to earn the same degree from a private institution, you will need to shell out twice as much money. Additionally, one of the worst decisions you can possibly make is to get a student loan so that you can attend a private school, which is something that a lot of people do. Avoid taking out any student debts at all costs. This advice can't be emphasized enough. They have the potential to destroy your life by robbing you of the capacity to save money and generate interest throughout the formative years of your professional career. While only 49% of the general population has taken out student loans, 68% of millionaires have never taken out a single dollar in student loans. Millionaires understand the significance of graduating college without any student loan obligations so that they can jumpstart their savings when they begin their professional lives. These professions, by the way, do not always involve high-paying occupations. This is another fallacy that people have regarding millionaires. Actually, 30% of those individuals have never had an annual household income that was in the six-figure range. And just around a third of them have made an annual average income of $100,000. So, what is it that people who are worth $1 million do? Engineer, accountant, and teacher are currently considered to be the best vocations. It seems that the majority of millionaires are just regular people living normal lives and working average jobs. Not their yearly earnings, but rather their demeanor is what differentiates them from others. It would appear like there is a crisis around every corner in the United States right now. They can be found just about anywhere you look, from the global financial crisis to the opioid epidemic. But nobody is talking about the crisis of responsibility that is currently affecting the United States of America. The unfortunate reality is that the vast majority of people just do not accept responsibility for the management of their own financial affairs. Consider, for instance, money set aside for retirement. The research team led by Hogan discovered that despite the fact that 56% of Americans were concerned about retirement, relatively few people were actually making preparations for it. According to the findings of the survey, half of baby boomers do not even have $10,000 stashed away. And 80% of millennials expressed regret that they weren't putting more money down for their retirement and developing a nest egg, despite the fact that they weren't actually doing either of those things. So, what is it that is preventing them? After all, they are the ones accountable for how their money is invested. This is something that millionaires are aware of. They are aware that they are the ones who are accountable for everything that occurs to them. In fact, 97% of them believe that they are the only ones who control their fates. They are also aware that the first step towards becoming a millionaire is to take responsibility for one's own financial situation before making any further moves in that direction. Starting with your current location and the destination you have in mind is the first step in planning a route using a GPS. Your current position in the world of finance is directly proportional to your net worth. Simply put, this is all you own, less any outstanding debts. Before you can have any kind of concept about how well you're doing, you need to compute it as accurately as possible. You might want to try utilizing a net worth calculator that can be found online. The author's website even has one. When you have a number in your possession, it's like having a little dot on a map that pinpoints exactly where you are. After you have established your current location, the next step is to determine the direction in which you wish to travel. Ask yourself, and your partner, if you are married, just what it is that you envision your retirement doing when the time comes. Where do you see yourself settling down? Which brand and model of automobile do you aspire to own? Make an effort to describe things in as much detail as possible. Then it is time to get down to the nitty-gritty of the situation. How much cash do you anticipate being required in order to turn your dream into a reality? To get to that number, you will need to calculate how much you will need to save up and how much money you will need to put up each month starting right now. Start right away because no one else is going to take care of it for you. No one. How can you tell if someone is sitting on $1 million or more? After all, the majority of millionaires lead unremarkable lives and wear blue jeans the same as the rest of us. One useful piece of advice is to observe the actions of other individuals. People that act intentionally are the ones who end up with million-dollar fortunes. The difference between deciding something and drifting into it is intentionality. Sliding through life is a sign that you do not have life under control. You are merely going through the motions without a strategy, and when you reach retirement age, you will most likely realize that you have not saved a single cent. On the other hand, deciding entails taking charge of the situation and selecting actions with full awareness. Consider the multimillionaire pair Frank and Alice, whom the author interviewed as part of his research on wealthy people. Both of Frank's parents and grandparents were German immigrants who lived a thrifty and hardworking lifestyle. They were unable of imagining spending more than they could afford or going into debt, and the example that they established for Frank when he was a young child has served as a compass for him throughout his life. That indicates that while he was working on Wall Street, he made a conscious decision to educate himself about investment and growing wealth rather than wasting money on flashy new things while he had the opportunity to do so. They got there the old-fashioned way, resolving to spend less than they made and saving for the future, rather than sliding into luxury New York City boutiques, which led to Frank and Alice's current net worth of $6 million. They got there by investing in their future. They are also in good company with others. According to the findings of Hogan's study, nearly all millionaires maintain their expenditures below their incomes, and nearly all of them also make it a priority to save money for large expenses. And how do those who are already wealthy maintain this level of fiscal restraint? It's not hard to figure out why. They stick to a tight budget. Now, budgets are frequently given a negative reputation. Many people's first impression is that they are nothing more than a restrictive financial environment. However, a financial plan is not a prison. It's a tool that puts you in charge of your own finances and gives you more freedom. You will be able to get more out of the money you have worked so hard to achieve and make it go a lot farther with a budget. In addition, a budget helps you see your financial situation more clearly. It removes any ambiguity and casts a clear light on the specific destinations of each and every one of your monetary contributions. And once you are aware of something, you are able to make more informed decisions. Do you typically spend more money on food than is necessary on a monthly basis? Make some adjustments to your spending habits, and you'll soon find that you have more cash on hand. Finally, having a budget allows you to put your money to work for you by allowing you to assign a purpose to each dollar. Take the money you would have spent on groceries and put it towards something more worthwhile, such as charitable contributions, savings, investments, or paying off debt. One thing that can be said about millionaires is that they always keep their word when they promise to do anything. In point of fact, 97% of millionaires surveyed said that they almost usually succeed in accomplishing the objectives they set for themselves. Anyone can learn to create goals, but doing so in a smart way increases the likelihood that those objectives will be accomplished. SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-sensitive. When we talk about goals being specific, we imply that they ought to be in high definition. They need to be precise, unambiguous, and filled with detail. This is where your well-crafted plan for your retirement, which you should have taken the time to develop, will come into play. Reaching a measurable objective requires establishing clear milestones or measurements along the way, such as settling on a particular sum of money that will be set aside on a monthly basis. Because of these checkpoints, you will be able to determine with absolute certainty whether or not you are succeeding in accomplishing your objectives. Achievable goals are the ones most likely to be attained. There is no such thing as an impossible objective, yet, if you keep your expectations in check, you should be able to do all you set out to do. Relevant is the opposite of random. You will not be able to plan to save money, go on vacations on a regular basis, and seek an advanced degree at the same time. Your primary objectives ought to be cohesive and should particularly drive you in the direction of the life you want to live. Time-sensitive refers to situations in which there are deadlines. For instance, if you are intent on making preparations for retirement, you need to be aware of the precise age at which you wish to begin your retirement. Set aggressive goals for yourself in terms of your deadlines. You might be amazed at how effectively you can get things done when there is some time constraint involved. After you have determined that your goals are smart, the next step is to commit to achieving them by writing them down. According to a study conducted by psychology professor Dr. Gail Matthews, this not only makes it more probable that you will reach your goals, but it also makes you more accountable for doing so. The study found that the likelihood of success increased by 42%. In an ideal world, goals should include both short-term and long-term components. You can keep yourself on track by setting wins in the short term, such as putting money down for an enjoyable vacation. The most significant drivers of life change are long-term objectives. Paying off your mortgage is likely going to be the most significant of these. As soon as this is accomplished, it shifts from being a debt obligation to an asset that is owned in its entirety. This is not a simple task by any stretch of the imagination. However, every year that passes in which you do not do so is another year in which you make the bank rich rather than yourself. Imagine you were able to pay off your mortgage 10 years earlier than expected. The money that you would have paid towards your mortgage payments would then have another 10 years to work for you to accumulate wealth. This is the tremendous potential offered by compound interest. Being patient can be quite challenging. Who among us is immune to the allure of immediate gratification? Millionaires, on the other hand, ignore these diversions and focus instead on being patient and consistent in their pursuit of money. When it comes to reliability, the enchantment of compound interest is unparalleled by anything else in the financial world. One phrase, which many people believe to have been uttered by Albert Einstein, refers to it as the most powerful force in the entire universe. Let's imagine you invest $1,000 and find that it has risen to $1,100 in the span of a year after your first investment. If you leave the money where it is, the additional $100 will also begin accumulating interest at the same time as the rest of the money. That's the definition of compound interest. And if you are willing to have some patience, your piece of the pie gets bigger and bigger. However, which long-term investment strategies can you actually put your faith in? The findings of Hogan's analysis demonstrate that the vast majority of millionaires obtained their wealth through participating in traditional workplace pension plans or 401(k)s. Here's how you can make the most of these opportunities. Assume for the sake of discussion that you intend to put away the 15% of your salary that is advised for retirement savings. The first thing you should do is investigate whether or not your current employer provides a matching contribution to your 401(k) plan. If it does, you should put as much money into your 401(k) as the company will match. For example, if the match is 5%, you should put in 5%. Keep in mind that you are being offered free money, so you should make the most of the opportunity. Next, deposit as much money as you can into a Roth Individual Retirement Account, IRA, which functions similarly to a 401(k), but provides you with more alternatives to invest your money. To make this happen, you need to discuss it with an investing counselor. This is a worthwhile endeavor because a Roth IRA is a powerful investing vehicle that will enable you to build your nest egg without incurring any additional taxes. You need to be aware, however, that there is a maximum allowable income for Roth IRAs. If you find out that your annual salary is higher than the limit that is now in place, the wisest course of action for you would be to just put the whole 15% of it into your 401(k). There is also a limit to the amount that can be contributed to a Roth IRA. After you reach that limit, you should deposit the remainder of your 15% into a 401(k) account instead. Keep in mind that the 15% is merely the